Anyone can improve their English with this podcast. We leave nobody out. Today, you'll learn the difference between anybody, anyone, nobody, no one, somebody, someone, everybody and everyone. Welcome everyone to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello, I'm Craig.
And I'm Reza.
And if you're a first-time listener to the podcast, you're very, very welcome. With nearly 50 years of teaching English between us, Reza and I will help you improve your English and take it to the next level. How are you, Reza?
I'm feeling, on the whole, pretty well. Although, as you know, I had a little accident on the way here. But don't worry, I'll survive. I fell over. I didn't learn to look where I was walking with a face mask on.
How embarrassing.
Embarrassing.
You didn't hurt yourself too badly, but as I said to you before, we have to suffer for this podcast. You've literally spilled blood to create this podcast and come over here and record with me, so thank you.
I was thinking about, isn't it getting really difficult now that it's warm because it's June here when we're recording in Valencia? That's warm. Thinking, the face mask, it's so warm. The face mask, and then I tripped over something I didn't see in the street. So forget about face masks as you walk about. Look at the ground. That's what I've learned today.
But Reza is okay, listeners. He's going to soldier on and continue podcasting. So thank you. First this week, we have a message from Anna from Italy.
Hi guys, this is Anna from Italy. I'm a big fan of your podcast. You have no idea what useful they are for me. I listen to you each day after leaving my daughter at school and before starting working. You are now a fixed appointment for me to start the day well. You are the best podcasters I have ever heard. I listened to podcasts of other teachers in the past, but they sometimes spoke too slow, other times they spoke too fast, other times they talked a lot without hitting the point. It was very difficult for me to follow them. Your podcasts, on the contrary, are perfect for my needs. They always have interesting contents. They allow me to review important points of grammar. And you guys are very clear, and I love your sense of humor. You have done an excellent work, so I thank you for that. I heard that you often talk about wonderful places around the world. So I would propose to you to talk about Sicily, which is an amazing isle in the south of Italy, where I've lived since I was born. It's a region full of history, good food, stunning beaches, very friendly and generous inhabitants. What do you think? Thank you guys for everything you do and keep doing it. Ciao, ciao.
Well, thank you, Anna, for those lovely comments and lovely compliments that you paid us and for sending in your voice message. We really appreciate it.
Yes, Anna, grazie mille, I think you say. That is one of the most complimentary, saying nice things, complimentary comments we've ever had.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. And we're really, really glad that we can be of service, that we're useful for you.
One episode that may be of interest to you, Anna, is an episode we did recently about Italy in general. It wasn't specifically about Sicily, but it might be interesting because we spoke about some food and some culture connected to Italy. And that's episode 209. So if you go to inglespodcast.com/209, you might be interested in listening to that episode. Is there anything we can help Anna to improve, Reza?
Well, it was a very good message. It was very clear, although there are one or two little things we could correct. I think you said, Anna, you have no idea what useful they are for me. They means the episodes of the podcast. But what useful doesn't sound right, because useful is an adjective, so you got to put the word how. You have no idea how useful they are for me. So how useful, how good, how big, how. So when you want to stress an adjective, you put how useful.
And another small thing, Anna, you said you've done an excellent work. Now, work is an uncountable noun. So when we have uncountable nouns, you don't need the article an or a. So you can say, you've done excellent work. That's fine. Or you can say, you've done an excellent job. Because jobs we can count. It's a countable noun. 1 job, 2 jobs.
You also mentioned where you live, Sicily, which is a place I'd love to visit. I believe it's very beautiful.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, you said Sicily, where I've lived there since I was born. Yeah, I understand why you said that, but grammatically we can't do it that way. You could say where I've lived since I was born, or you could say blah, 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 Sicily, then a new sentence. I've lived there since I was born. In other words, you cannot have in the same sentence where and there, because they mean the same thing. Where means there. So you cannot say where and there together. So have 2 separate sentences, or say where I've lived since I was born.
And thank you, Anna, for your message. Next, we have a voice message from Danielle from Mexico.
Hey Reza, hey Craig, how's it going, guys? I'm Daniel from Mexico. I'm gonna tell you that I just discovered your podcast the last month and I'm crazy about it. I'd really like if you do and explain about the difference or when to use anybody, nobody, no one, anyone, somebody, someone, everybody, or everyone. Thank you and greetings for you both.
Well, Daniel, thank you very much for your message, which was very clear. You have really good pronunciation and you were very, very accurate. Don't you think, Craig?
Yeah, very good, Danielle. 1 or 2 small things, though, we did notice. You said, I discovered your podcast the last month. Don't use the article the, so just last month. I discovered your podcast last month, last year, last week.
And perhaps one more little thing we should point out. You said, do and explain. Well, first of all, explain is a verb and we need a noun. And also we need to collocate a different verb. It's not do, it's give an explanation. So you would like us to give an explanation about anybody, nobody, etc.
And that's exactly what we're going to do. So thank you very much, Danielle, for your idea. And these words can be confusing, can't they, Reza? Anybody, anyone, nobody, no one, somebody, someone, everybody, everyone. When do we use them? What's the difference? We're going to go in detail about these words. And hopefully at the end of the podcast, you'll have a better understanding of how to use these words.
Yes, these words, it's a good example of something which is really quite tricky grammar that a native speaker never thinks about.
Yes.
But if you start thinking about it, you realize, oh my God, this is really complicated actually. So we fully understand that many listeners probably have problems with these words. So the words Danielle mentioned were anybody, anyone, nobody, no one. Let's just stop for a minute. No one. Now, anybody, anyone, nobody, you write them together. They're one word. There's no space. However, with no one, you have to put a space. This is the one exception that has a space in the middle. So it's no space one. Because if you write N-O-N-E with just one O in the middle, that would be the word none. And that's a different meaning. So no one separate, right? All the rest together. Somebody, someone, everybody, everyone, they're all together except no one separate.
And these words are often used as pronouns. For example, if I say someone stole my wallet, I could say he stole my wallet or she stole my wallet. If I say someone stole my wallet, I'm using someone as a pronoun. And the famous song by Queen, Find Me Somebody to Love, that's a pronoun, but it's an object pronoun. So they're very often used as pronouns. So let's start with somebody or someone, which if you are a Spanish speaker, you could translate it to alguien, some person, for example, someone or somebody, and anyone or anybody, those can be interchangeable. You can use those without a huge change in meaning. For example, you could say, I'd love it if somebody would teach me how to use Instagram, because I don't know. Or I'd love it if anybody could teach me how to use Instagram. Or I'd like it if anyone would teach me how to use Instagram. So these words, you can interchange them without a big change in meaning. But there is a slight difference, Reza, isn't there, between someone and anyone?
Yes, someone, or it could also be somebody, is more specific. Especially if you're talking about the number, it refers to a non-specific one. So someone, so I need one person to do something. Can someone help me? I just need one person, right? But anyone or anybody is more general. It could be more than one. Can anybody help me? And maybe I'll take help from 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people. But we don't really think about that when we say it. But probably on a subconscious level, some were thinking of one. So somebody, someone. Whereas anybody, anyone, look, I don't really care if it's 1 or 2 people. I just need a minimum of one person to help me. Would you say so?
Yeah, and that's true also if you look at the words any and some. If I said to you, I like jazz music, I like any jazz music. Any, whatever you play that's jazz, I like. If I say I like some jazz music, that's restricting it to only a portion or a select number of songs that are jazz. So there is a difference. And in Spanish, I could say that any es más amplio and some is more específico. Let me give you an example with anyone and someone. I can say that anyone can listen to this podcast. If you have a computer, if you have a mobile phone, it's easy. Anyone can listen. But I'm sure that this month, someone will listen from Mexico. And I hope it's Danielle. So someone will listen from Mexico is a lot more specific.
Here's another example with someone. Someone's at the door. So I heard. And you say, someone's at the door. I presume it's a specific person. Yeah, someone. Someone's at the door. I cannot say here anyone. It won't work because obviously it's a specific person. Someone's at the door. Or imagine I'm walking around my house and I go into a room and the light is already on, but there's nobody there. I say, someone left the light on. So obviously a specific person, whoever was using that room last, that person has left the light on. So we got to use there someone. We couldn't use anyone because we're being specific.
And if you've studied some and any in grammar books when you're studying English, you've probably seen in some books that usually some is used in positive sentences, but any is often used in negative sentences. And this is the same. I can say anybody or anyone with a negative verb. For example, the tourist can't find anybody to translate for her. Or the tourist can't find anyone to translate for her. So here, if you're a Spanish speaker, ninguna persona. It's a negative word.
There is, in fact, though, another way of doing that just to make life a bit more complicated because we do use the other form. So you can say anybody or anyone with a negative verb, as Craig said, or you could use the word nobody or no one with a positive verb and it means the same thing. What you can't do, you cannot use nobody and no one with a negative verb. Sounds strange, but it's true. I'll give you an example. I could say, I don't know anybody here, or I don't know anyone here. So I'm using a negative verb. I don't know anybody here. Or with a positive verb, I would say, I know nobody here, or I know no one here. So the easiest way to remember is, if you have a negative meaning, it's a negative verb plus the word anybody or anyone, or a positive verb plus the word nobody or no one.
And I realize that this might sound a little confusing, a bit complicated. Don't worry if you cannot read at the moment. When you get to a computer, when you can use your mobile phone to read, go to inglespodcast.com/368 and you will see all this information written in the show notes. Anyone can go and look at those if they want to. Did you see what I did there?
I see what you did.
And in a similar way that I said before, we can use any, or we often use any with negative sentences. We also use anybody and anyone with questions very often. And in Spanish, that will be alguna persona or alguien. For example, does anybody know where David lives? Or does anyone know where David lives? Because it's a question, we use anybody or anyone. Another example, did you find anybody to repair your watch? Did you find anyone to repair your watch? So anybody, anyone, when you're asking a question.
Another meaning, which is a different meaning of anybody or anyone, is to mean any person, meaning that I don't care who. If I tell you the Spanish, if you speak Spanish, then you'll get it immediately. I mean cualquier persona. And you're thinking, yeah, but cualquier persona is not the same as alguna persona. You're right, it's not. But in English, coincidentally, we use the same words. So anybody, anyone can mean alguna persona, or it can mean cualquier persona. Let me give you an example. Anybody who listens to this podcast can follow us on the podcast player so that they never miss an episode. Anybody who listens, cualquiera, or cualquier persona, anybody or anyone. So we don't mean it in a negative sense there. We mean it in a positive sense, but specifically cualquiera. It doesn't matter who. It's not important who. And have you noticed we often use the word they because anybody or anyone has no gender. It's not specifically masculine or feminine. And we use they in modern English as singular to mean it could be a man or it could be a woman. We're not specifying. So you've probably learned in your early days, your very first few weeks of English, they is plural. Yeah, if it's singular, he, she, it. But no, remember that they in modern English, maybe not 50 years ago, but in modern English, you can say they, meaning he or she.
It's also very common now to use they when people identify as not gender specific. So sometimes people don't like to be labeled as a male or female, as a he or a she. So they is also being used more in English because it's not gender specific, as Reza said.
So let me just repeat that sentence then. Anybody who listens, so singular, right? Anybody who listens to this podcast can follow us on the podcast player so that they, singular meaning they, he or she, never miss an episode.
And please remember that it's third person. Remember that S on the verb. That's a mistake that we often hear from learners of English. Anybody or anyone is tercera persona. It's third person. So anyone who listens. Remember that S. Another example, anyone can take their English to the next level by studying with Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig. Let's move on to no one and nobody. Remember that nobody is written as one word. And as Reza said at the beginning of the podcast, no one is two separate words. So not one person, nadie, no one or nobody. I threw a party. I had a party, but nobody came. Or no one came means the same. We can also use nobody as a noun. You're just a nobody. I sometimes feel like a nobody. And Reza didn't ask me because I feel like a nobody and he didn't pay attention to me.
No.
You see? I feel like a nobody.
That reminds me of the old joke. I'm going to modify it a bit. Doctor, I feel like a nobody. Everybody keeps ignoring me. Can you help me? Next.
Nice. Yeah. Next. Another expression with nobody that you could use that I quite like, actually. The lights are on, but nobody's home. That means the particular person, he or she, is not very intelligent. So imagine a house where the lights are on, but there's nobody inside. Imagine a person's brain. They're moving, their eyes are open, but there's no brain. They're not thinking. There's no intelligence. So, yeah, this person is a bit slow. The lights are on, but nobody's home.
Craig, did you hear about that guy back in the 60s? He was just a nowhere man, living in a no man's land, doing nothing for nobody. Was that it?
I did, yeah.
I heard about him.
I heard about him from the 60s.
There was a Beatles song, Nowhere Man, I think it's called. He was a nobody. It was about a nobody. So they used lots of negatives. He was lived in nowhere, and he did nothing because he was a nobody.
Yeah, a nowhere man. And finally, moving on to everybody and everyone, which in Spanish is todos or todas, every person. Everyone needs time to unwind, to relax, to take it easy. Everyone needs time to unwind. And notice I stressed the S there on needs because, as I said before, it's a third person. Everyone.
Yes, that's interesting because, of course, in Spanish, you might translate it as todos. And todos is plural, so you conjugate it as a plural. But in English, the word everybody or everyone, although it refers to more than one person, strangely, you must put it with the third person singular. So if you're a Spanish speaker, avoid that possible mistake of grammar when you translate. Here's another example. Not everybody liked the curry, but I thought it was delicious. So we could put the word not before everybody. We could, but it's not the same as saying nobody. It's not the same. Not everybody does not mean the same as nobody. Nobody means not one person. Not everybody means not all the people, but maybe some of the people. So it means no todos, right? But maybe algunos, yeah?
We hope that everybody has enjoyed the podcast and learned something from it. And now that you've listened to us, we would like to listen to somebody. Why not you? Why not record a sentence or two? Send us a voice message and we will put it in the podcast in the future. So to do that, you need to go to speakpipe.com. That's speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. And Reza, if people are a little bit shy, maybe they don't want to record their voice and hear it on the podcast, where can they send emails?
Well, we do encourage everybody to send us a voice message, but if anybody prefers to send us an email, you could write to Craig@inglespodcast.com or me, belfastreza@gmail.com.
And if you're looking for a paid course to improve your English, maybe just an audio course or a specific course to help other aspects of your English, go to the Mansion Ingles website where we have a selection of courses. That's store.mansioningles.net.
As ever, we'd like to thank everybody who's helping us by supporting this podcast on Patreon. That's Patreon, Patreon. They donate money. And you might be interested in donating money to the program. You can donate as little as $1.20 per month. The 20 cents is to include VAT, value added tax. So for that money, you get instant access to recent audio transcriptions. If you're interested, go to www.patreon.com/Inglespodcast.
And before we say goodbye and go out the door, we'd like to welcome our new Patreon sponsors who have joined us just this month. And they are Fernando Figliolo, and I'm sorry, Fernando, if I've mispronounced your surname. Ignacio, thank you. Juan Rios, thank you very much. Miguel, has also donated, and another person who has remained anonymous, a no-name person who, along with Miguel, is supporting this podcast for more than the minimal amount of $1.20. So we thank you, and we thank all of our lovely Patreon supporters. What's next week, Reza?
On next week's episode, we're going to talk about opiates and also book recommendations and improving your fluency.
Yeah, there's no specific focus for next week's podcast, but we are going to comment on your feedback and answer your questions that you've been sending us. So please join us next week for that. If you missed last week's podcast, we spoke about prepositions and phrasal verbs for a digital world. So if you haven't heard that, if you're a new listener, you might find that interesting. Until next time, stay safe, have a good week. It's goodbye from Reza.
And it's bye-bye from Craig.
The music in this podcast is by Pids. The track is called See You Later.